Hi, I'm Katie Wilson and you're watching A News. Let's see your headlines. Israel's Prime Minister says decision is made for full takeover of Gaza. Moscow says it's no longer bound by intermediate missile restrictions. The Netherlands becomes the first NATO country to fund a new weapons initiative for Ukraine. Israeli media is reporting that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has announced plans to seize the entire Gaza Strip. His war cabinet is set to discuss the plan on Tuesday.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is reportedly preparing to launch a full military takeover of the Gaza Strip, with multiple Israeli outlets citing senior officials in his office. Channel 12, I-24 News, and others say the decision has already been made, and Netanyahu's war cabinet will meet on Tuesday to discuss how to proceed. The reported aim is to expand the offensive into all parts of Gaza, including areas where Hamas is believed to be holding Israeli hostages. Netanyahu, in a cabinet meeting on Monday, doubled down on his war goals.
We must continue to stand together and fight together to achieve all our war objectives: the defeat of the enemy, the release of our hostages, and the assurance that Gaza will no longer pose a threat to Israel. Later this week, I will convene the cabinet to instruct the IDF on how to achieve these three objectives, all of them without exception.
His office has not officially confirmed the plan. However, the Palestinian Foreign Ministry condemned the reported decision and urged global powers to intervene, warning of further civilian suffering. Pressure is growing both internationally and at home. Protesters gathered outside Netanyahu's office Monday, demanding an end to the war, a comprehensive hostage deal, and scrapping efforts to dismiss the Attorney General. Videos showing visibly emaciated Israeli captives have intensified public anger. Meanwhile, conditions inside Gaza continue to worsen. At least 74 Palestinians, including dozens waiting for aid, were killed in Israeli strikes on Monday, according to local medical sources. Ceasefire talks have collapsed, and Israeli jets resumed bombings near the border.
Canada conducted its first humanitarian airdrop over Gaza on Monday, delivering over £20,000 of critical aid, amid nearly 2 years of Israeli military operations in the territory. The Israeli military confirmed that 6 countries participated in a coordinated effort to airdrop 120 food aid packages for Gaza residents. Canada reiterated accusations that Israeli restrictions are obstructing humanitarian relief, calling such actions a violation of international law. Last week, Ottawa announced plans to recognise Palestine at the upcoming United Nations General Assembly, intensifying diplomatic pressure on Israel. The Kremlin says Moscow is entitled to take any relevant measures on the deployment of intermediate and shorter-range missiles, as it is now not restricted by anything. That's after Russia withdrew from a unilateral moratorium on land-based missile deployment. Our correspondent Dasha Chernyshova has more from Moscow.
The Kremlin is yet to react to the US president's announcement that he has deployed nuclear-capable submarines to what he called appropriate regions. Donald Trump said the move is in response to Russia's former president Dmitry Medvedev's remarks, suggesting that he would be ready to launch a nuclear strike as tensions rise over the conflict in Ukraine. Political observers in Russia suggest that the verbal spat between Trump and Medvedev would come down, but at the same time note Moscow's earlier comments that using threats and ultimatums is unacceptable and would only lead to further escalation. Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin said Friday that Moscow is willing to continue talks with Kyiv, but reminded of Russian success on the battlefield. He also said that the first mass-produced Oryezhnik hypersonic missile systems have entered service with Russia's armed forces. Trump's skirmish with Medvedev began a few days ago when Medvedev advised Trump not to play ultimatums with Russia, warning him of a potential conflict between Moscow and Washington. On Monday, Trump reduced the deadline for a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine to 10 or 12 days and threatened imposing, quote, sanctions and maybe tariffs, secondary tariffs. Trump previously spoke about Russia's so-called dead economy and called Medvedev an unsuccessful former president. In response, Medvedev advised Trump to think about a dead hand, an automatic launch system for nuclear weapons. Dasha Cherneshova, Asia 1, Moscow.
The Netherlands has become the first NATO country to fund a new US weapons initiative for Ukraine, pledging €500 million. The aid will include Patriot missiles and spare parts. The US ambassador to NATO said more countries are expected to join in the coming weeks. The scheme follows President Trump's call for European allies to finance arms shipments for the war-torn country. NATO chief Mark Rutte urged others to contribute swiftly to meet Kyiv's urgent needs.
The Dutch are just the first of many. You're going to see a series of announcements in the coming weeks. You know, when we announced this facility that allowed our NATO allies to buy U.S. equipment and provide that to Ukraine for their defense, you know, we had a lot of our allies raise their hand and line up. A lot of them are coming together in groups to pool their money and their resources together to provide these armaments and munitions. And so, you know, it's the whole purpose of NATO and what makes this alliance the strongest is this platform we have to communicate amongst allies and to really talk about these issues and come up with solutions.
The European Union is putting a pause on billions of retaliatory tariffs against the United States. The tax hikes were targeting US goods after a new trade accord was struck with President Trump last month.
The European Union will suspend 2 packages of planned countermeasures against the United States tariffs for 6 months, according to a European Commission spokesperson. The decision follows an informal meeting between US President Donald Trump and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen in Scotland on the 27th of July. As part of the New Deal, the EU will halt tariffs worth €93 billion that were due to come into effect this week. The duties targeted a range of US goods, including steel, aluminium, cars, and agricultural products. Trump claims the agreement includes a 15% tariff on EU exports to the US, €600 billion in European investment in America, and a massive €750 billion worth of US energy sales to Europe. He had threatened 30% if a deal was not done by his 1st of August deadline. Trade between the 27-member bloc and the United States last year totaled almost $2 trillion. However, the deal has sparked criticism within Europe. Former High Representative of the European Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, Josep Borrell, described it as politically damaging. He accuses the Commission of caving in to Trump's pressure and compromising the EU's strategic independence. The European Union and several European leaders had warned that if a trade deal with the US was not reached by the 1st of August, the bloc would impose retaliatory tariffs on American goods.
A new trade agreement between the United States and the European Union has stirred criticism across Europe, as many believe the EU gave up too much.
Mr. President, the President...
The ink is barely dry on a new US-EU trade deal, and already it's sparking political ripples across Europe. Under mounting pressure from Washington, the European Commission signed a new agreement with the United States. One, critics argue, strongly favours American interests. The deal suspends planned EU tariffs and boosts European purchases of US energy and technology in a bid to avoid a full-blown trade war. But many in Europe say Commission President Ursula von der Leyen conceded too quickly, fearing retaliation from President Donald Trump. They claim the agreement is one-sided, benefiting Washington while exposing Europe's economic vulnerabilities. Germany, France and Italy, the EU's largest economies, are struggling with weak growth, high debt and, in some cases, recession. Meanwhile, the US economy remains resilient, growing at an annual rate of 3%, fueled by strong job numbers and consumer demand. Analysts say Brussels had little leverage. A prolonged trade war would have hurt Europe far more than the US, especially amid the ongoing fallout from the war in Ukraine. Facing political and economic pressure, the EU appears to have chosen a tactical retreat. The message from Washington is clear. US trade policy is shifting to serve its own strategic interests, especially as tensions with China rise. For Europe, the challenge now is to strengthen its own economic and defence posture to restore transatlantic balance. Supporters of the deal say it was the most realistic option under the circumstances, but the debate has reignited deeper concerns about Europe's reliance on the United States and whether the EU is ready to stand up for its own economic interests in an increasingly competitive world.
President Trump vowed to substantially raise tariffs on Indian exports, accusing India of buying large quantities of discounted Russian oil and reselling it for big profits, despite the massive human toll in Ukraine. He didn't specify how high new tariffs would go, which is on top of the 25% duty already imposed. Over the weekend, 2 Indian government sources said India will keep purchasing oil from Russia despite President Trump's threats. The sources did not wish to be identified due to the sensitivity of the matter. India has hit back at criticism from the United States and the European Union over its ongoing imports of Russian oil amid the Ukraine conflict. New Delhi insists these imports are essential to keep energy affordable for millions of its citizens.
In an official statement published by India's Ministry of External Affairs, New Delhi defended its continued imports of Russian oil amid growing criticism from the United States and the European Union over the ongoing war in Ukraine. The statement said India began buying Russian oil after supplies were redirected to Europe following Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022. It added that the US initially encouraged India to increase these imports to help stabilize global energy markets during a volatile period as the conflict disrupted supplies worldwide. India's foreign ministry also highlighted what it called apparent double standards in targeting New Delhi, noting that both the European Union and the United States continue significant trade with Russia despite the war. The EU's bilateral trade with Russia reached nearly 67.5 billion euros in goods alone in 2024, alongside 17.2 billion euros in services the previous year. European imports of liquefied natural gas from Russia hit a record 16.5 million tonnes last year. Washington has threatened to impose much higher tariffs on Indian goods, accusing India of buying discounted Russian oil and reselling it for profit, complicating diplomatic relations amid the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. India's total trade with Russia surged to a record $68.7 billion in the last fiscal year, reflecting expanding economic ties even as the war continues to reshape global alliances. Experts say India faces a difficult balancing act, securing reliable, affordable energy for its growing economy, while navigating mounting geopolitical pressure from the West and the global call to isolate Russia over its actions in Ukraine. New Delhi says the criticism is unjustified and that it will take all necessary measures to protect its national interests and economic security.
Coming up after the break, we'll be discussing the latest developments in the Russia-Ukraine war with Rudolf Mihovich, CEO of Christian Medical Association. Stay with us. Welcome back to A News. Now, let's return to one of our top stories as Moscow says it's no longer bound by intermediate missile restrictions. Joining us now is Rudolf Mihovich, CEO of Christian Medical Association. Thank you for being with us. Now, what's your reaction to this latest statement from the Kremlin?
Thank you for telling about truth. So I think that Moscow is too much optimistic about sanctions. And if India will stop buying oil from them or decrease, it will impact on the battlefield very much. They spent already more than $1 trillion for the last 3 years for the war. And it's a huge budget that they were saving from 2014 when they started the preparation. And if they're going to be cutted with the budget, even from India only, and China is still going to be support, I believe that it's going to impact on the front line very much.
So Kyiv is insisting that sanctions are hurting Moscow's war machine, but Putin is still intensifying attacks on Ukraine, and Trump admits that Russia is very good at avoiding sanctions. How concerned are you about that?
More than 3 years of war, and we already had a lot of threats from Putin. And you heard all of them. If you're going to give javelins, we're going to attack more. If you're going to give artillery, we will start nuclear war. If you're going to give tanks, HIMARS, F-16, Patriots, all of the donations or military support from West was supported with threats from Putin. Nuclear weapon or something unbelievable and hard to imagine. But all of those threats from Putin were very not effective. Only one time Oreshnik was launched, and all other time he silently stayed in Kremlin. But when you're talking about drone attack with Shaheeds, when you're talking about like 5 up to 1,000 drones per night, yes, it's pretty hard. And for our economy, for our people, because this week, 31 civilians died in Kyiv just from drone attack. Economy very struggling. But I believe we will stand up because we don't have other choice. Otherwise, we will give up and die.
And you think sanctions are making a tangible difference in the outcome of this war? They're not just another form of pressure?
Definitely is the most important pressure should be on the front line. So definitely if President Trump would launch a big and beautiful military package support from US with not 31 Abrams or 3-4 Patriots, but with really big support, what America can do, this will impact the front. If they're going to invest in Ukrainian drones, will change the front line. This will impact much more than sanctions, because sanctions, it's a long term. We understand that if we're going to take away the money from Russia, yes, most of the soldiers in Russia army right now fighting because of money. Some of the captured soldiers, I was talking with special forces, they said, those captured Russian soldiers said, if you would pay me, I would fight for you. So definitely if they're going to have less money, less people will join army. We see that they're recruiting people from North Korea, from Africa, from Colombia, Mexico, and other countries that are less developed or people require in financial support. So maybe sanctions are not always working as we would like to be, but still it's decreasing the budget of Russia. And business in Russia is struggling very much. We can see it even without open banking system that is hidden from West. We see it from business activities and other transactions.
So let's look ahead to Trump's special envoy's trip to Moscow. What can we expect from this visit?
Short answer, nothing. because they're just going to talk again. Maybe they're going to hug, maybe one more painting of Trump through Witkoff, but nothing more. I don't expect that Putin is going to give up with the war. I don't expect that he's going to give some pause, 30 or other 30 days ceasefire. I don't expect that. He already pushing as much as possible. Maybe he's trying to negotiate and put sanction later. He's telling that he's not afraid, but I believe that he's afraid if America will impact, at least in India. He's afraid of that because the money is a very important resource for them. And if they're going to have less money, they will not be able to fight.
And it was the Russians who asked to speak with Witkoff. What do you make of that? Is there anything in that?
Again, I think they're just trying to make out some additional timing.
Just a last-minute ploy to delay sanctions?
Yes, maybe they will offer to Putin, let's do a meeting together, Zelensky, Trump, Putin. So it's going to be a big deal and more attention. And okay, 2 more weeks. We already heard from Trump many times, 2 more weeks. He already said 4 times, 2 more weeks, and we're going to end the war in Ukraine. So maybe we'll have additional more 2 weeks. But Putin will definitely not stop. And from latest news, we see the Trump administration, the war in Ukraine is bigger and bigger priority. He saw that America again, make America great again. It's not like America isolated. It's a powerful America that can stop war in Iran in a couple hours with the power of weapon, not just talking as it used to be with Biden and etc. So I think he feels this power in his hand and he wants to use it more.
It's fair to say that you're not optimistic at all then about this meeting that's coming up?
We stopped being optimistic a long time ago. We are pretty much alone, and so optimism it's not very good during the war. Realism is much better. It's not always good, but it's help you to survive.
And what could Putin offer to Trump to make him listen other than a ceasefire in genuine peace talks? You really think there's no chance that that could be on the agenda here?
Good, very good question, because Trump is very unpredictable, as the same as Putin. Actually, one thing, Putin is more predictable because he's pushed by his previous action. The investment that he made in military war machine, he cannot cancel it. Trump is more unpredictable, but I don't see much very other ways. If he's going to offer some kind of business deal, Republican Americans will not support. Latest polls are showing 87% look at Russia as main enemy, or one of the main enemies, together with China. So if there are going to be some business deal for minerals, I don't think it's going to work out. The population of U.S. will not buy it and not agree for that, to having business, even very financial positive for American economy. So any other things, I don't think that he can offer.
So there is a glimmer of optimism there in that Washington does seem to be hardening towards Putin. Would you agree with that?
Yes. Yes, because after Israel, maybe it was a long time for Trump to wake up. Maybe it was costed us more people. But we see that after war between Israel and Iraq, he changed his view on that. He sees that power in Americans' hands, and he can, with bombs and rocket, he can make a difference in situation. He made many calls with Israel and etc., but it didn't work. To stop a war, you have to stop aggressor.
Now let's examine those 2 US nuclear submarines that were sent near Russia, the Kremlin has said that it is extremely cautious and that there can be no winners in a nuclear war. What do you make of that statement?
I think they're afraid. This is a first reaction, a good reaction on former President Medvedev, because he was able to talk in Twitter, X, anything that is not possible to do for an official politician. He was threatening with nuclear weapon on right and left. And Trump heard that and said, okay, you want to joke? Here is another joke for you, but with action. And he stopped actually. What is really funny, he stopped tweeting and he stopped talking since that. So I think America likes much more right now power than talking. And they see that Russia can threat a lot. And if you're going to read for the last 3 years posts from Medvedev, they were crazy. They were very nationalistic, very fascist. Kill Ukrainian versus enemy. We're going to send nuclear weapon for Berlin, for Washington, etc. And here's reaction.
It's been really great to get your insights. Thank you so much, as always, for joining us on the programme.
Me too. Thank you.
Now, after the break, we'll be back with the key stories shaping the region. See you soon.
On World Business, we meet the boardroom leaders making market-moving decisions. And find out how leaders are dealing with continuous technological disruption. Good morning, you're watching A News Live from Baku to the world.
There's a long line of...
To truly understand this conflict, we need to look beyond the normal
Asia-Pacific region. Well, this is a major development, not just for the governments of countries across the South Caucasus and Central Asia. Its impact is also increasingly being felt in Brussels, London and Berlin.
Welcome back to A News. Now let's take a closer look at the key developments shaping our region. The third United Nations Conference on Landlocked Developing Countries opened in Turkmenistan under the theme Driving Progress Through Partnerships. The conference will run from August the 5th to the 8th. UN Chief Antonio Guterres opened the meeting, naming Turkmenistan's president as chair. He highlighted the event's goals, Turkmenistan's policies and plans for international cooperation. The conference addresses the trade and connectivity challenges faced by 32 landlocked developing countries, home to around 600 million people. Iran says it has entered a new phase in its relationship with the UN nuclear watchdog as the IAEA Deputy Director General prepares to visit within the next 10 days. But the chairman of the National Security Committee of the Iranian Parliament said that the delegation will not be permitted physical access to any nuclear sites. Our Iran correspondent Taraz Shiralilu has more from Tehran.
Foreign Ministry spokesman Baghai told a weekly press conference that the IAEA Deputy Director General will be visiting Iran in the next 10 days, while Tehran and the UN nuclear watchdog have entered a new phase of relations. The visit follows Parliament's decision in late June on suspension of cooperation with the agency after IAEA failed to condemn the US and Israeli airstrikes against Iran's civilian nuclear facilities under its safeguards. The spokesman added that the government will redefine its ties with the agency after the upcoming visit and in compliance with the legislation. Earlier, the Beirut-based Al Mayadin TV, quoting unnamed sources, reported that IAEA will be sending a delegation to Tehran soon to review only political aspects of Iran's cooperation with the agency, and that the delegation is not consisting of any inspectors. Tehran has said that it will lodge a complaint against the IAEA Director General Rafael Grossi for his false reports on Iran's nuclear program, which were used as a pretext for the Israeli-US attacks last June. Iran has also vowed a decisive response to the threat by the European powers to reimpose the UN nuclear sanctions in October amid growing calls in Iran in domestic political circles for withdrawal from the Non-Proliferation Treaty. In the meantime, Deputy Foreign Minister Saeed Khatibzadeh said in an interview with the Hong Kong-based Phoenix TV that Iran does not want to cease its cooperation with IAEA. According to IRNA news agency, he said the inspectors left Iran voluntarily. They were not expelled and they will return in coming months. Taraz Shiralilu, reporting for A News TV, Tehran.
President Trump is reportedly close to facilitating a peace agreement between Azerbaijan and Armenia. That's according to Senator Steve Daines. He noted that most previous mediation attempts by third parties have failed, and he criticised past US administrations for not prioritising peace in the region. Congressman Joe Wilson also praised Trump's mediation efforts, calling him an unmatched peacemaker and suggesting that a peace deal between Baku and Yerevan could be his next achievement. Meanwhile, the US State Department confirmed that Secretary of State Marco Rubio and French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot discussed the ongoing peace process in a phone call. China has reached a major trade milestone, dispatching its 20,000 freight train to Europe through the Middle Corridor. The train departed from Inner Mongolia loaded with 55 containers. Since its launch in 2013, traffic along the route has surged, doubling from 10,000 trains in 2022 to 20,000 today. Officials say the corridor is not only boosting economic connectivity, but also reinforcing its value as a strategic alternative in the global freight movement. Turkey's parliament has launched a new cross-party commission to address Kurdish rights, following the announcement by the PKK of its disbandment after nearly 4 decades of armed attacks against the Turkish state. The parliament speaker opened the first session, calling it a historic turning point in the country's fight against terrorism. He said the aim is not to change laws, but to reinforce brotherhood through dialogue. He underlined the need to move beyond a security-only approach and focus on freedom, equality and justice. Sticking with Turkey, its fast-growing defence industry is gaining global recognition. European countries are rearming and the demand for reliable suppliers is growing. Our Turkey correspondent Aliyah Aziz has more.
Turkey is fast emerging as a key player in Europe's evolving defense landscape, rising from regional partnership to a global defense supplier in the face of mounting geopolitical tensions. From the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine to growing uncertainty over the long-term U.S. military presence on the continent, European nations are rapidly rearming, and Turkey's defense sector is stepping in to fill that demand. Defense exports from Turkey soared from $2.3 billion in 2020 to over $7.1 billion in 2024, placing the country as the world's 11th largest arms exporter, according to Stockholm International Peace Research Institute. Turkey's exports to Europe alone jumped from $369 million to $1.2 billion over the past 3 years, now accounting for 22% of its total defense sales. Poland, the first EU and NATO member to purchase Bayraktar TB2 drones, received all 24 units by mid-2024. Albania and Croatia followed, which acquires logistics, training, and command and control systems. In 2024, Aselsan launched a regional office in North Macedonia to coordinate activities across the Balkans. Havelsan, another important Turkish defense player, won a Romanian tender to modernize maritime surveillance using its MATRA software platform. Recent collaborations that took place this year in 2025 are also reinforcing its foothold. Turkish drone maker Baykar is partnering with Italy's Leonardo, while Turkish Aerospace Industries is co-producing the Hurjet light combat jet in Spain. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte recently called Turkey's defense space impressive and urged deeper integration with European systems. With both innovation and reliable delivery, Turkey is not only purchasing, but increasingly the builder of Europe's future security architecture. For A News, this is Aliyah Aziz, Istanbul, Turkey.
Turkey has secured another major boost for its energy sector, with the World Bank approving hundreds of millions in new financing. The latest deal is part of a broader push to modernise infrastructure and cut reliance on imported energy. The World Bank has approved almost $750 million in financing for Turkey's energy transmission overhaul, bringing total international support this year to around $7 billion. The funding will help the state electricity company modernise the grid and expand renewable energy capacity. The United Nations Secretary-General has called for urgent global and regional support for Afghanistan. He warns that millions continue to suffer under worsening conditions. Our Afghanistan correspondent Tamim Bahis has more from Kabul.
At the launch of the United Nations Regional Center for Sustainable Development Goals in Almaty, Kazakhstan, Secretary-General Antonio Guterres singled out Afghanistan as a priority for international cooperation. He thanked Kazakhstan for its growing support, saying nowhere is the cooperation more urgent than in our support to Afghanistan. Guterres described the challenges facing Afghans, including entrenched poverty, mass displacement, and repeated natural disasters. He said the people of Afghanistan deserve peace, stability, and a better future. He also reiterated the United Nations' demand for full respect for human rights, especially the rights of women and girls, calling for economic self-sufficiency and dignity across Afghan society. The new regional centre, launched in partnership with local and international institutions, aims to support long-term development and cross-border cooperation. Kazakhstan, which maintains strong ties with Afghanistan, is expected to play a key role. So far, Afghanistan's authorities has not responded to the Secretary General's remarks or to the centre's launch. But international pressure is growing for more engagement and accountability. The United Nations says solidarity and shared responsibility will be vital for Afghanistan's recovery. This is Tamim Bahis in Kabul for A News.
After the break, we'll be taking a closer look at those reports about Washington facilitating a peace agreement between Azerbaijan and Armenia. See you soon.
Join me, Nick Summerby, on A News. From my days playing in the Premier League to working as a broadcaster for the channels like Al Jazeera and beIN Sports, I've never been afraid to ask the tough questions to find out what's really going on behind the scenes of the world's biggest sports teams. We'll be taking you inside the latest stories, stats and dressing room secrets of the world's biggest teams.
Hello, I'm Orkun Amashov. Welcome to Dialogue of Civilizations. No man is an island entire of itself. Our true connection as species go far beyond digital technology. In this exciting new series, I'll be exploring a vast and fascinating history of connections between civilizations and revealing secret bonds that have helped societies, cultures and religions peacefully coexist. Join me and let's explore together.
We are ready to welcome everyone to come to Gabela and to make unforgettable memories.
Welcome to Gabala rafting.
This territory is the most important place in our history. Our ancestors lived here 2,000 years ago, and they had here amazing culture, amazing civilization.
There's something for everyone here. This place is the largest amusement park in Azerbaijan.
Our guests love to have meal in this atmosphere.
Yeah.
You know, you see you're in nature, in the forest, and the good food.
It's 6 tons, 579 liters.
And it's a lot of wine.
And biggest cask in the world.
Bandar is not just a holiday destination. It's a symbol of Azerbaijan's growing tourism potential.
The doors are open. Welcome to Gabala, Azerbaijan.
Welcome back to A News. Now, fresh reports suggest a potential breakthrough as President Aliyev and Prime Minister Pashinyan may meet in Washington this week, with President Trump expected to host them for a memorandum of understanding. Joining us now to unpack these latest developments is Professor Dr. Ashfaq Ahmed, Chairman of Politics and International Relations at the University of Sargodha. Thank you for joining us. Now, how credible do you find these reports about an upcoming Washington summit between Aliyev and Pashinyan?
Thank you, Katie, for inviting me and have me on this particular issue. Okay, as far as the reports are concerned, if we browse the media, you will find that there are reports, and the media is is bombarded with these reports that there is going to be a summit having President Trump, President Ilham Aliyev, and Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan. But the issue is that Nikol Pashinyan office, or the Prime Minister office in Armenia, has neither denied these reports that Pashinyan is going to fly to Washington, nor they have confirmed these reports. So there are two different aspects. And as far as the signing of the MOU is concerned, that is scheduled on Friday, the day after tomorrow, perhaps. So the point is that there are mixed reports about signing of this agreement.
So if it is confirmed, how significant would that be, that shift from behind-the-scenes diplomacy to a potential public memorandum of understanding?
Please allow me to say that if you go back to President Biden era, in October, President Biden, he sent his special, he sent Carpenter Marco Carpenter to Baku so that he can deliver President Biden's letter to President Ilham Aliyev. And in that letter, President Biden, he expressed his desire that Baku and Yerevan, they signed a peace agreement. So that is one portion. And if we come and analyze the Trump administration, you will find that there had been high-level meetings, and there had been high-level officials who had been talking about signing of this memorandum of understanding or letter intent. So if you talk about Turkey's ambassador, yesterday, Foreign Minister of Azerbaijan, he had a telephonic conversation with Turkey's foreign minister, and he briefed him about this particular potential memorandum that is going to be signed, perhaps in Washington. So that is one issue. The second issue is that President Trump, his special envoy for peace talks, he visited Baku in March, and he was also, he talked about two issues. First, he talked about the peace process, and then he talked about the possible signing of the peace agreement between the two countries. And so that is the second element. The third is that there had been, Trump statement, and he was also talking about that both these countries are closer to signing the memorandum of understanding. So it is not the case that there had been behind the closed door meetings. Rather, the meetings were held publicly. And moreover, the July, if we talk about the month of July, there had been progress on this particular issue. So keeping all this particular issue in mind and all these facts in mind, we cannot say that it was behind the closed door, understanding. Rather, it was open diplomacy.
So you referred to that previous meeting last month in Abu Dhabi and the progress reported there. So what key terms do you think might be included in this letter of intent from what we know from Abu Dhabi?
I forgot to mention that Prime Minister Pashinyan, he also visited Istanbul, and so that the peace process, which is ongoing between Azerbaijan and Armenia, that can be further, that can be further forwarded, or they can reach a peace agreement. So as far as the terms and conditions which can be possibly included, at least 13 to 15 clauses have already been accepted by both the side, the Armenian side and the Azerbaijani side. So if we talk about the controversial issue, one of the controversial issues between between these two countries is the dissolution of Minsk Group, which was created in 1992 and which could not, achieve the aim for which this particular group was created. So President Ilham Aliyev, he insists that Minsk Group should be dissolved. The second issue is, and President Ilham Aliyev has also referred to these to this particular point, that is that Armenia, it does not refer to Karabakh in its constitution. So that is the second issue. And the third issue is, that is that these are the issues of which. So the point is that what can be included, since both these countries, they are perhaps going to join to sign a letter of intent, which if you talk about the legality of letter of intent or memorandum of understanding, the letter of intent is not a binding document. So if these countries are going to sign a letter of intent, there is possibility that Armenia may agree to dissolve the Minsk Group, because Minsk Group in 3 decades could not achieve the objectives for what it was created. And the second issue is that the Zangezur corridor might be, there is possibility that Zangezur corridor, they agree, the Armenian side, they agree that for the establishment of the Zangezur corridor. And one more important issue, that is the President of the United States of America in Istanbul, he was also, he also issued a statement stating that United States of America can lease the Zangezur corridor for 100 years, so that both these countries, they can live together peacefully. However, this particular proposal that that United States of America lease the Zangezur corridor was rejected by the Armenian side. So so the change in the constitution of Armenia, that may not be included this time. But the other 2 clauses may be included in the letter of intent or MOU.
So how should we be viewing this increased US involvement in the Armenia-Azerbaijan peace process, and how is this going to be viewed by regional powers like Russia, Iran?
So if we talk about the local players, or the regional players, which include Iran and Russia, Iran is always skeptical of the Americans, and recently we had this this crisis, and there had been attacks on Iran. So perhaps if so Iranian, they will have a reservation. Might be they talk about the possible intelligence gathering by United States of America because of its involvement. Why I'm referring to this particular point is because Iran has in the past referred to the European Union peace, the activists or the group which is stationed in Armenia has been alleged by Iranians that they are involved in intelligence gathering. So as far as Russia is concerned, Sergei Lavrov, he in the past has issued statement about EU mission in Armenia, that it was spying on Azerbaijan and Russia and Iran. So these are the issues, and moreover, because in the past, if you talk about EU mission in Armenia, a Canadian official, he was identified in the mission. So that was referred to the not EU mission in Armenia, rather it was called as the NATO mission in Armenia. So the point is that of American presence in the region, Iran and Russia, they can have their security dilemma, their apprehension or their concerns that can be further aggravated. So they will be opposed, if I'm not wrong, they will be opposed by the regional actors.
And what about domestically in Baku and in Yerevan? How is this being viewed? Because the meeting in Abu Dhabi was direct, wasn't it? There wasn't any third-party mediators.
Yes, but if you talk about the the meeting in Abu Dhabi, that was between the two parties. Abu Dhabi is considered to be a neutral place, so no third party was involved. So therefore, the agreement could not be achieved. But if we talk about particularly this time, the Americans or President Trump, he is going to be involved in this particular process, and the domestic reaction which you referred to. So that can be there can be two different angles to domestic reaction. For example, if you talk about Azerbaijan, of course, President Ilham Aliyev political stature that will be increased, and that will increase twofold. And moreover, he will be respected. Not his respect in the Azerbaijani population, the domestic audience, that will increase. His opposition leader, they will agree to the point that President Ilham Aliyev has exceptional diplomatic skills for bringing the Armenians on the table and signing the particular agreement. While if you talk about the Armenian side, Nikol Pashinyan, there had been alleged reports that he was there was alleged life attempt against Prime Minister Pashinyan in the past when Armenia was expelled from the illegally occupied territories. So that is one aspect. And the second aspect is that if you browse the news, you will find that Nikol Pashinyan is already under intense pressure from different groups, from the church in Armenia, from the political leaders in Armenia, and Russians also. So this particular agreement, it can be suicidal for Pashinyan.
Thank you very much for your insight and for joining us on the programme.
Thank you for inviting me.
Well, that's all we have for now. Thank you for watching and stay tuned to A News.